Have you ever noticed how people seem to want you more the moment you stop chasing them? It's strange, isn't it? The moment you pull back, even slightly, suddenly they start paying attention. Suddenly they miss you. That's not magic. That's psychology. And if you understand how to tap into it, you can make anyone miss you badly without uttering a single word. One of the most powerful ways to do this is by detaching emotionally. I know that sounds counterintuitive, especially when you care about someone deeply, but let's be honest. When you're constantly available, always texting first, always accommodating, always showing up, even when they don't deserve it, you're teaching them that your presence is guaranteed, that no matter what they do or don't do, you'll be there. And the truth is, people don't miss what they believe they'll never lose. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring altogether. It means you stop over-investing. You stop giving them VIP access to your time, your energy, and your emotions when they haven't earned it. It's not about playing games. It's about restoring balance. And when you do, something powerful happens. The energy shifts. You go from being the one who needs them to being the one they need. When you detach emotionally, you regain your power. Suddenly, you're not obsessively checking your phone for their reply. You're not overthinking what they meant when they said that vague sentence. You're not anxiously wondering if they still care. You're focused on you, your peace, your glow, your growth. And that shift, it's magnetic. People can feel when you detach. They sense the change. They pick up on the silence that once was filled with your validation and attention. They start to ask themselves, why do they pull back? Did I do something wrong? Are they talking to someone else? And it's in that mental loop that the missing begins. Because you're no longer feeding their ego, no longer chasing, no longer filling every emotional gap they've gotten used to outsourcing to you. You have to remember, emotional availability is a gift, but only when it's reciprocated. When it's not, it becomes a liability. So you pull back, not to punish, but to protect your value. You stop giving them the front row seat to your life if they're not showing up like someone who deserves it. You reclaim your emotional real estate, and you plant peace where confusion used to grow.
When you become emotionally independent, people don't just notice, they feel it. They feel the gap your energy used to fill. And more often than not, they'll come back. But this time it'll be different because now it's not about convincing someone to want you. It's about letting your absence remind them of what your presence once meant. Let me ask you something real. When was the last time someone truly had the chance to miss you? Not just noticed your silence for an hour or two, but really felt your absence, really questioned what happened to the version of you that used to always be there. Most people never give others the chance to miss them. They're too busy trying to stay present, trying to prove their worth, trying to hold everything together. And that's exactly why they get taken for granted. If you want to be missed, badly missed, you have to learn the power of disappearing.
Not forever, not in a toxic or punishing way, but in a way that reclaims your value. It's what I like to call the disappear-reappear strategy. You step back just long enough for them to notice your absence. You step back just long enough to make them feel the space you used to fill. And when you return, you don't come back apologizing for the silence. You come back calm, composed, and completely unbothered. That contrast is what messes with their head. Most people operate on predictability. They assume you'll always text back, always reply immediately, always say yes to plans, always be emotionally available. So the moment you break that pattern, even for a short while, it catches them off guard. And in that pause, in that interruption of routine, they start remembering. They remember your laughter, your energy, your kindness, your presence. And because they're no longer getting it on demand, they start to crave it. The key here is subtlety. You don't ghost. You don't create drama. You simply shift your energy. Maybe you stop responding as quickly. Maybe you don't initiate conversations for a while. Maybe you don't show up where they expect you to. You become a little harder to reach, a little more mysterious. And in that space, curiosity grows. When you reappear, the impact is so much greater. It's like reintroducing a rare fragrance someone forgot they loved. But you have to resist the urge to explain your absence. You don't owe them a rundown of where you were or why you pulled back. The silence did the work. Let it stand. The truth is, your presence is powerful, but only when it's not overused. When you give too much access, people forget how special you are. But when you learn to leave, just for a moment, and then come back with calm confidence, you remind them of everything they once had and everything they might have lost. You don't make someone miss you by being more available. You do it by mastering the rhythm of when to pull away and when to return. And when you do that right, you won't have to ask them to value you. They'll feel it in your absence. Let me tell you a secret. Nothing makes someone miss you more than watching you grow without them, watching you evolve in silence, watching you become better without needing to announce it. Because the moment you stop chasing validation and start focusing on self-improvement, everything shifts. Not just how they see you, but how you see yourself. And that confidence, that glow, that's what sticks in their mind long after you've stopped calling or texting.
Too often, people stay stuck in cycles of trying to prove their worth to someone who never really saw it in the first place. They overthink every word, replay every interaction, hoping that if they just say the right thing or show enough loyalty, they'll finally be seen. But the truth is, you don't become unforgettable by begging for attention. You become unforgettable by becoming someone who doesn't need it.
When you redirect that emotional energy you've been pouring into them and invest it into yourself, your body, your mind, your peace, something magical happens. You stop looking outward for approval. You stop waiting for the text, the call, the invite. You stop trying to be enough for someone who never even recognized your value to begin with. And instead, you become the version of yourself that you've always known you could be, but maybe kept tucked away for the sake of love or attention or comfort. And guess what happens when you do that? People notice. They notice that you're no longer orbiting around them. They notice that you're not online waiting to reply anymore. They see that your confidence is growing, your energy is lighter, your presence is more powerful, and they start to question, did I miss out on something real? That question alone keeps you on their mind far longer than any text or late night call ever could. But the irony is, the less you try to be seen, the more visible you become. You show up online looking better, speaking with more clarity, walking with more certainty. You're not doing it for them, but they'll feel it anyway, and that's the key. Because when your motivation shifts from look at me to look at how far I've come, the energy becomes irresistible. You're not proving anything to anyone. You're building for yourself. And in that process, you become someone they can't forget. Because now you're the one who slipped through their fingers, not the one who stayed begging to be held. So stop waiting for them to realize your value. Stop hoping they'll see the good in you when you haven't even shown yourself what you're capable of. Focus on becoming better, not bitter. And let your evolution speak louder than any words ever could. Be honest with yourself. When was the last time they texted first? When was the last time you didn't have to be the one carrying the entire connection on your shoulders? Wake up every day truly happy that you're the prize winner. And what's more, they're counting on you. If the thought of pulling back makes you anxious, that's your biggest sign right there. Because the one who always initiates, always reaches out, always keeps the energy alive, is often the one who cares more. And when someone never has to reach for you, they rarely appreciate having you. There's a subtle power in not being the first to text, in not being the one who always checks in or starts the conversation. It forces clarity. You get to see who's actually invested and who's just responding out of convenience. But beyond that, it creates space. Space for someone to notice your absence, space for them to wonder where you've gone, space for them to ask themselves, why haven't I heard from them? That silence, when used with intention, is not distance, it's information. It tells you who's willing to meet you halfway and who's just along for the ride. And the people who really care, they'll feel your absence and move toward you. The ones who don't, well, their silence will speak louder than anything else ever could. What's important is that you stop trying to fill every silence out of fear. Because fear will make you over-communicate, over-apologize, over-explain. But someone who truly values you won't need a reminder that you exist. They'll seek you out. And if they don't, that's your closure.
This isn't about mind games, it's about respect. Respect for your time, your energy, your heart. If every conversation starts with you and every check in is yours to make, then you've turned connection into a one-way street. And no one misses what's always there. Let them come to you, let them make the effort. And when they do, you'll know it's real. Now, of course, it won't be easy at first. You'll feel the urge to reach out, to break the silence, to send that message just to keep things warm. But pause, take a breath, let them come to you. Because if someone never even notices your silence, you don't need their noise in your life. There's a calm strength in not initiating. It doesn't make you cold, it makes you grounded. It tells the world and yourself that you're not chasing anything that isn't running toward you, too. And when you hold that kind of energy, you don't have to make anyone miss you. They just do. Have you ever noticed how someone starts paying attention the moment you stop trying to be seen? It's wild how silence, when used right, speaks louder than words. And here's the truth. If you really want someone to miss you, don't flood their world with your presence. Appear just enough to remind them of what they had and then vanish again. That's how you create lasting curiosity. That's how you become unforgettable. See, most people try too hard. They overshare, overpost, overreach, all in the hope of staying relevant in someone's mind. But the harder you try to stay in sight, the more invisible you become. People stop paying attention when they're constantly fed the same energy. Familiarity doesn't just breed comfort, it breeds boredom. So instead of trying to constantly stay visible, you have to master the art of selective presence. Sometimes it's a story that shows you laughing without explanation. Sometimes it's a photo that speaks confidence without needing captions. Or maybe it's showing up at a mutual event and letting your energy do the talking without a single word exchanged. These are small touches, breadcrumbs, really, but they do more than any long message or emotional confession ever could. They remind them of what they once had, and then they leave space that their mind rushes in to fill. And here's where the real power kicks in. You don't follow it up. You don't reach out the next day asking if they saw your post or wondering if they noticed you were around. You let it linger. You create a contrast, a pulse of presence, followed by a clean withdrawal. It's that rhythm that creates longing. That sudden reappearance reminds them of your warmth, and your sudden absence forces them to sit with the cold. Because it's not about disappearing forever. That's not the goal. You want to show up just long enough to remind them of your glow and then retreat, not because you're playing games, but because you're protecting your energy. You're showing them how rare you are by limiting access. And that limitation creates value. People don't crave what's always there. They crave what they're not sure they'll get again. When you give them just enough to remember and then go quiet again, their mind replays what they saw. It wonders if it meant something. It tries to interpret what you were feeling. That internal dialogue is what keeps you alive in their thoughts, even in your silence. It's about timing. You appear strong and unbothered, and then you fade. And when done right, that absence doesn't make you forgotten. It makes you unforgettable. What if I told you that silence could be your loudest response? That walking away quietly could echo in someone's mind far louder than any explanation ever would? Most people don't realize this. They think they have to keep talking, keep explaining, keep clarifying why they're pulling away or change. But every time you over-explain yourself, you hand your power away. If you truly want someone to miss you, stop trying to convince them of your value. Let your silence make the statement. It's natural to want to be understood. When you distance yourself from someone or choose to stop showing up the way you used to, there's a part of you that wants them to know why. You want them to see how their actions hurt you or how their indifference made you feel invisible. But here's the thing, if they cared enough, they would have noticed without needing a monologue. And if they didn't care then, no amount of explaining will make them care now. Silence creates reflection. It forces people to sit with a void you once filled. When you stop showing up, stop texting, stop being emotionally available, and you don't offer a long speech about it, they're left to wonder. They go over your last interactions, they replay moments, they ask themselves, did I miss something? Were they always this quiet? That curiosity, that questioning, that's what makes you linger in their mind. There's a certain mystery in not telling your side of the story. You stop chasing closure and start creating presence through absence. You leave room for interpretation. And that's powerful because the mind hates unfinished stories. It wants answers, it wants closure. And when it doesn't get it, it holds on longer. That's how you become unforgettable. So when you feel the urge to type out a paragraph explaining your silence, pause. Ask yourself, who am I really doing this for? If it's for your own peace, write it out and keep it to yourself. But if it's to make them finally understand, let silence do what your words haven't been able to. Sometimes it's not about getting someone to understand your pain. It's about learning that they were never listening in the first place. Silence shows self-respect. It says, I no longer need you to see me. I see myself clearly now. It communicates confidence. It draws a line without saying a word. And ironically, that quietness will often scream the loudest in their world, especially when they're used to you always filling the gaps. You don't have to announce your distance. You don't have to explain your growth. You just have to move differently. And when you do, the people who took your presence for granted will feel your absence more than they ever expected.